This is the Powered Up Podcast, show 22.
They also want to help because they see me praising other people that are helping in previous units. They know that's really important to me. I even had a sign on my wall that says, "You will be teaching and learning." So, and then we'll get to dance, right? So, Matt, if you're really experienced in dance, I expect you to be able to help me out. And so they love it, though. They want to be in charge on the ones that they feel confident with. I tell them all the time, too, like my best students in PE, I have no idea. I have no idea if they love the activity or not, because they have a positive attitude, whether they have a ton of experience or not.
Welcome to a real-world education with insight and advice from teachers in the game, where current and former educators reveal what truly sets apart the great teachers and what it takes to make a positive impact on students. Whether you're in pre-service learning, new to the game, or a seasoned veteran, this is the show for you. You'll leave feeling inspired to take action because we are powering education by empowering you.
What's going on? This is Ken Ehrman, host of the Powered Up Podcast, and I am here with my co-host, Mr. Matt Double Dutch Rogers. Matt, how is it going?
You know what? It's going great, Ken. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. I had an awesome day today. So what I want to dig into to start things off is, Matt, what does good teaching look like?
Oof. All right. So you're going to come from that avenue.
Absolutely.
I think, honestly, this podcast has been a great reflection of what good teaching looks like. And it looks like a lot of different forms. It looks like a commitment to what you think is good for kids. And what that looks like can be different every day, every year. It can be what you're focusing on. I thought it was interesting in this interview, a little snippet Kyle mentions about, like, used to be very stern and kind of almost forceful. And we all go through these changes where we think that the right thing to do is to be caring and supportive, but our behavior management suffers, or to be too strict, but our relationship suffers. So that kind of pursuit of finding that kind of balance between good and bad, what are the drawbacks and what's worth it in every area, whether it's relationships, whether it's curriculum, whether it's technology integration. It's constantly having that curiosity to figure out what is the perfect balance, what is the perfect inclusion, what is the best use of my time. That pursuit is good teaching. And that's why people say it takes forever to never perfect. You're never going to get it perfected. You're just going to get a system and make smaller and smaller tweaks because you've already made those big kind of paradigm shifts to identify what works for you. Did I do an all right job?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great explanation. And, you know, I've always been a firm believer of it, that good teaching is good teaching. And I went from the elementary world to now being an instructional coach in the secondary world. And I stand by that. Good teaching is good teaching across age levels, across content areas. And Kyle, our guest tonight, Kyle Bragg, a elementary physical education teacher from Arizona, proves that. He paints a picture of so many activities, lessons, and things that he does in his classroom or his gymnasium that are good teaching practices. He talks formative assessment. He talks real-world application. He talks interweaving soft skills. He talks about using praise very directly and very specifically and strategically to get the behaviors out of the students that he's looking for, and about his purposeful modeling that he involves in his classroom. And all of those can absolutely be applied to your content and your age level that you're working with on a daily basis. You might have to rewind it and listen to 30 seconds again and try to think about, okay, what are the key components here? How do I apply this to my classroom? But I truly believe that any teacher listening to this can absolutely apply the message that Kyle brings into their classroom. And so I'm super excited to launch this interview out for our audience. Like I said, Kyle, he brings such a great perspective to what classrooms can truly be like. And he's a passionate, dedicated educator. He's been awarded with many things over the course of his career. Most recently, he is the Shape America 2021 Teacher of the Year, which is a national recognition, which is pretty amazing. So without any further delay, let's jump into that interview with Kyle Bragg. Hey, Kyle, welcome to the Powered Up Podcast. How you doing tonight?
Great, Ken. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So kick things off, introduce yourself, where you're from, and, just what your journey and career in education has looked like so far.
Yeah, so thanks. I started in Illinois. I graduated from Illinois State University. I played golf there, so I'm still a big golfer on the weekends and summers. It was a really tough position to be in as far as after I graduated, there weren't any jobs available. I applied to tons, but never heard back. So it was actually interesting. I had to go like door to door, like I was selling cookies or something, like trying to find anything. And I just dropped my resume off a bunch of schools. And like, I know you don't have an opening, but just want to do whatever I could instead of just watching Netflix or whatever, doing nothing. So I wanted to do something about it. And eventually I got called and they said, we don't even have a PE position, but we were so impressed with you that we actually want you to start a PE program. So that was how I got started. It was crazy. Yeah, it was. Looking back on it, it's like, man, that's crazy how I got started. And then that was part time. Then I got to a full time position, but then I was cut. So then I tried something new in Arizona. So I was in Illinois, moved to Arizona. A couple years later, found a job. A couple years later, though, I was cut again. So it's been a crazy ride. And so the last 5 years, I've been in a school where the principal values me. They trust me to do it my way. And then that's when all these good things happen. So it's amazing how that support from administration can really lead to some great things because she has believed in me and let me do it the way I thought was best for kids. So it's been crazy, and all this stuff in the recent years has been I've been on cloud nine. It's just doing whatever I can to help my kids out, and looking forward to seeing how it continues the next few years.
That's great. I actually had a very similar start in my career. I spent a year subbing, wasn't hearing anything from anywhere I applied. And so my second summer after graduation, a couple local districts had maybe one classroom position that was open. And so the school that I was originally hired at in Penridge, I threw on the suit. It was a, day in July, 90 degrees out. I walked into the office and said, I understand you have an opening in second grade. Here's my resume. I'd love to be able to hand it to the principal in person. Principal walks out of his office, talks to me for 10 minutes. I interview the next day, and I was hired a week later. And I actually went to 3 schools that day, and 2 of the other schools called me like 2 weeks later, but I was already like just about to be hired or very close in the process. And, I think that speaks a lot to who you are and how much you've gone through to be where you are. It's probably a huge part of everything that you've accomplished. Is there anything that you translate into your classroom that you feel those experiences kind of pushed you to do, where you're teaching those life lessons, or you're having those conversations with kids, or you're trying to push that idea of possibly grit or just pushing forward through pain or through rejection?
Yeah, I would argue that about 80% of that has led to my teaching philosophy and how I approach lessons. And I saw a few of your just bits and pieces of your podcast previously, and like the 3 or 4 that I saw, like plans, transitions, growth mindset, technology integration, those kind of things I'm very passionate about too. Social emotional learning, understanding things are going to go bad sometimes, and you got to find a way to get it done. So all the things that I've done, being cut. My mom was a life coach too, so that kind of helped kind of shed light of how to help people beyond the physical skills. So I'm constantly integrating things that they'll be using for the rest of their lives, whether it's problem solving, teamwork, getting along. So whatever they want to do when they grow up, I'm here to help them teach that within PE. So obviously we're teaching physical skills, but we're teaching, mental health, getting along with people. Because if they want to be a doctor, lawyer, teacher, whatever, they're going to have to use those for the rest of their life, right? So they might not have to use the foot skills in soccer unless they're going to be a soccer player, but they are almost guaranteed to be using those character traits, and that's something we weave into our program often. And I think they at first saw me from this teacher that has had the success and some praise, but I try to remind them that it didn't come from nothing, right? It came from hard work, and I've been now they know I've been cut, and they were like shocked when I told them that. They're like, "How could anyone cut you?" And it's like, well, some people might not see it my way, or didn't believe in me as much, and then we talk about believing in yourself, and then setting goals, and so beyond that, that's why I'm really proud of my kids and our program is because they're learning real world lessons that regardless of where they go into whatever profession they go into, they're going to be able to use these skills, and hopefully they can take what they learn at PE and use those in the future.
I think when looking at your position, I'm sure you deal with plenty of people that say, "Oh, PE is one type of thing. It's the gym class. It's running around, getting energy out, and it's focused on just being a break from learning." And really, it's a huge opportunity. I think what you're leading with is social emotional and team building and all these skills that are such a like PE gives a great opportunity to give examples or opportunities to work on those skills. Like we were talking with a coworker recently about conflict resolution at recess. And not that our PE teacher's not doing a great job, but that is where instructing teamwork and sportsmanship and kind of like pride and setting goals, as you mentioned, really translates in a fun, focused way in PE, but can directly be translated back to the classroom. So, can you kind of talk about? I know you'll definitely go into this, but the kind of your core values of how you're building lessons or units, or what are those foundation items? Because they're probably very similar to what a classroom teacher has when they're teaching reading and writing and math. How do you kind of pull those features in to each of your lessons to keep it as focused and as beneficial as possible?
Yeah, I think part of the reason why the students are so motivated is because like most of my philosophy has to do with praising students in a way that everyone can do it. In other words, I'm going to praise your effort. I'm going to praise your eye contact. I'm not going to necessarily be so proud of you hitting the ball over the fence because not everyone's capable of doing that. So when you give compliments that everyone is capable of doing, like elbow bumps, fist bumps, praising that, then all of a sudden it levels the playing field and everyone feels emotionally safe to be in PE. So it's not just the athletes. So that's number one. That's how you get that buy-in. But also, first of all, asking them what they want to learn and making sure that you establish that relationship where they are a big part of the class too. So we have a wonder wall, and the question might be, what else would you like to learn in PE that we haven't done yet? Or and then maybe we'll reach out to the community and see if that we can make that happen. Like martial arts, we didn't have martial arts, we didn't have the equipment. Somebody said they want to do several people said they want to do martial arts, and then we reached out to the community and brought someone in for free, and he trained the whole school in a day. And the reason why we got that is because we just allowed him to hand out his flyers at the end. So that's a win-win, right? He can get more people. But I think just establishing a culture that everyone's going to feel included, valued, respected. There's no favorites. I'm not praising things that only the athletes can do. I'm including their interests, even our rules, right? They're essential agreements that we build together, and I might ask them, what does a good teammate look like, or sound like, or feel like, and then that's how we develop our respect, or responsible, whatever our expectations are, our essential agreements. So making sure they feel a part of our class, but also practicing those things, right? So practicing problem solving, like you said, we have a conflict corner that a lot of PE teachers have that I learned through Twitter. They just go through the 5 steps. There's pictures, there's visuals, there's just short little words so they can understand it, and then we practice that, right? So we'll practice picking people up, be pre-COVID, but if someone falls down, we run over there and pick them up. So I think that's important, that these teamwork, these social emotional learning things need to be practiced, just like throwing a ball, just like handwriting. And once they're practiced and praised and modeled and highlighted, I think everyone's capable of doing them. So now you don't really have many problems or issues with classroom management because they've already practiced those skills that they can do it on their own. And so we're empowering them to solve their own problems, kind of like you said at recess. So hopefully they can transfer that to recess. And sometimes I actually do see them doing it at recess, which is pretty cool. So the total transfer settings there, but that's a big part of our program, empowering them and making sure, because I tell them I'm not going to be there at recess. I'm not going to be there in middle school. Like, you're going to have to do this on your own. But we give them opportunities to practice it just like we do with other skills.
That's great. Speaking about praise, you talked about praising for behaviors or actions that everyone can do, not just the athlete. So what else? I want to dig into that. What else does good praise look like for a teacher? What are things that we can focus on to make sure that the praise is having an impact on students, and not only on the student you are praising, but the others that are witnessing and hearing it? So beyond that was a great job. What does good praise look like to create an effect for the student?
Yeah, like I said, that's something we practice too. The praise, there's a compliment sandwich that you guys probably heard. So I like that you step with the opposite foot. Remember to keep your head down. So that one kind of redirect, and then I like that you get a positive attitude. So we practice the positive, the correction, and then the positive again. And I told them, I don't know if I should have told them that, but that's how I do emails too to parents. They want to hear the positive, and then something we can fix, and then end with the positive. But I also give feedback to, let's say Matt is struggling emotionally, but Ken, I might give you feedback on, let's say we're doing volleyball, we're doing the bump, the forearm pass. So I might say to Ken, I love how you're keeping your arms straight in a triangle, even though you already know that. But I'm not going to always say, Matt, keep your arms straight, because he's already kind of frustrated. So if I constantly talk to Matt like he is always needing help, then he's going to feel lesser about himself. So we call it proximity feedback. So I'm giving Ken feedback that I want, that Ken already knows. He doesn't need to know it, but Matt needs to hear it, and he's next to him. Therefore, Matt's going to hear what I'm saying, and so is all the other people around him. But it wasn't for you, Ken. It was for Matt, so he doesn't feel, oh, everyone needs to always help me. So I'm helping Ken, but I'm really helping Matt. So proximity feedback, and so all that just takes a little bit of practice to get kids to understand that it's a process. It's going to take a while. It just takes practice. So a lot of times I show me messing up. We'll do jump rope. I'll mess up, sometimes on purpose, sometimes accident. But hey, I'm a human being too, right? And then they're like, well, if Mr. Bragg messes up, then it's okay to mess up every now and then, as long as we learn from it. So those life skills, like I said, we practice and we praise and but then we actually praise the praisers. So if Ken's doing awesome, Matt might be saying, Ken, I love how you're so honest in the game. And then, I'm praising Matt for saying that to Ken. So I'm praising the praiser, but also we do that in front of everybody. So if Ken stops right before the safe zone and I want to make a big deal about it, so I'll stop and I'll stop the class. And did you notice that Ken stopped a foot before the safe zone? He could have easily tried to act like he got there, but he knew deep down it was the right thing to do to stop. So let's all clap for Ken. And then after that, it's, after they see that you're highlighting those things that everyone's capable of doing, and like I said, everyone's more willing to be honest and do those things. And the culture is really, positive for the kids then.
I think the thing that really sticks out to me is what you were saying, is that proximity feedback, because that's something that a school teacher, a classroom teacher can take out of the phys ed classroom and really bring into the classroom, because we are so used to giving feedback and giving support to learners and identifying the areas that they need to work on, that is a common thing, that we need to spend more time. And we've classically heard this, that if you give feedback to someone in a kind of negative or slightly damaging way, that you're identifying a fault, you're kind of losing the kids' motivation to fix that right, to right that wrong. And so the ability to identify what is going well in the classroom that clues all of the kids into what is going well allows the learners who are doing the right thing to get the boost, acknowledging what they're doing is right, as well as kind of clue in a few of the learners that are not kind of maybe doing the best job to make an adjustment and kind of follow along and follow the class dynamic. And it won't connect to everyone. We've been working on responsive classroom at our building recently, and it's a big shift, responsive classroom versus looking at like PBIS, where you're acknowledging the good of the entire building or the entire class, or really handing out rewards or acknowledgement frequently to help encourage the large majority to make good decisions. And I just think that proximity feedback is something very obvious to us, something that we understand from our undergraduate studies. It's not a new concept, but it's the idea of just recognizing that if I see something that I don't want to see out of a learner, they can make an adjustment from hearing what was the right thing to do. And I know Ken and I have talked about it before, but the kids are intending to do right. So if they're intending to do right, most times an adjustment or a model of what looks right is just good teaching practice to allow the kids to get redirected to this concept of what they should be doing. And it's amazing how much alleviation of challenge or problems in the classroom you'll get from just a few minutes where you really target, hey, this is what's great. And a lot of the kids pick up on that just saves you time and allows you to focus on teaching, focus on what's going on, or focus on bigger issues, bigger behaviors that get caught up along the way.
I couldn't agree more, Matt. I was focused in on the same exact thing. I love that idea of proximity feedback. And you think about from a secondary teacher's perspective, if you have a student coming to you, let's say fourth period of the day, well, if they're typically someone that needs that, extra direction, they need that correction, chances are they're getting that in periods 1, 2, and 3. And so now by fourth period, that first time that you're saying it is already too much for them. And so, it's a great strategy for anything. I mean, honestly, I do the same thing when one of my own children is not doing what I want. I'll praise the other one, and then magically, the one that I'm struggling with is following directions. It's just, you can only take so much negative feedback. And two, sometimes perhaps not even their emotional threshold, they don't need to be told what's wrong. They need to see what's right. And so being told what's right from someone else or hearing it on someone else might be that prompt that they need. And on that topic of feedback, Kyle, I like how every example you were giving, you were being very specific. And that's so important for teachers to do. Like you said, Matt, you did a really good job getting all of your materials ready for this transition, or you did a really great job finding common denominators beyond that was a great job on that problem. So it's, those pieces are super important.
And beyond that too, explaining the why. So like we'll have a freeze position, so we'll put the ball in between our feet, and then I'll praise the person that's doing it, when I say to do it. But then we talk about why is that so important, and they'll say, oh, because we get more game time. Like, yeah, exactly, right? So it's not just because I want you to stop just because I'm mean or whatever. I want you to have as much fun time as possible. And then after you say that, the why, and you talk about the why of whatever you're doing, it really helps. Speaking of feedback too, we have this iPad app called BAM Video Delay. BAM Video Delay, it's on a whatever second you want on a delay, but I usually do like 7 or 8. So just today we were doing bowling, and after they bowl, they go watch themselves. So literally they're talking about what they see themselves doing. So beyond the feedback that I'm giving, they're able to self-assess and critique themselves by seeing it, rather than me saying what I saw, right? So we're empowering them again to kind of assess themselves, and with a partner too, do a little peer assessment. But that's so powerful when they can actually see it. So, you can probably envision, like, high school, whatever, we're doing push-ups, and then the teacher's like, your back's not flat, like, well, if I saw my back, I can know for sure and be more willing to change it versus somebody, you know, I guess it helps if you trust the teacher, but I think that the visual feedback is so important. And then the last thing I would say is, sometimes I ignore let's say we're hitting and we're hitting off a tee, a baseball, and let's say they miss a couple times. I'm not going to automatically go in and tell them how to fix it. I sometimes either let them watch themselves or let them persevere. And then once they crush it, maybe the third or fourth attempt, then ask them questions, because now I'm drawing attention to the positives. Maybe I'll ask, where were your feet when you crushed that one? How did it feel? Like, what did you do with that front foot? And they'll say, I stepped into it. I swung level. And so by bringing the attention to the positives, they're more likely to love doing that activity in the future versus always trying to correct them the first time, because they can persevere. They can solve this on their own. You just give them, maybe just have a role model, or maybe just demonstrate one more time. But to constantly be nagging them or trying to fix everything for them, I think it actually does them a disservice, whether it's PE, or whatever. So I think allowing them to um, positively struggle, I guess we would call it, is important.
I think what you bring up, this concept of whether it's productive struggle or the concept of having the opportunity to reflect back on what's going on, is really the huge part. We spend so much time working to get the kids able to answer a question or a series of problems. And truly, what we're trying to identify is, are the kids learning the skills? And the skills really come down to the process and being able to execute the process and the formula to get an end product. And in your case, that may be a game. Do they understand the rules enough to be able to conduct themselves and finish a competition with good sportsmanship and following the rules and really understanding all of the why behind it? And in the classroom, really it's utilizing the strategies that it would take to allow them to successfully complete an activity in the classroom. We talk about math talk or thinking through the process of solving a problem all the time, and that's where true understanding of curriculum comes through. If they really understand it, they're going through the process of kind of mentally talking themselves through it. So if it's long division, they start with divide, then multiply, then subtract, then bring down and repeat. And so that concept of knowing the steps and having that conversation is truly the kind of the sign that a student knows what they're doing. And I think the ability to watch yourself or identify, we classically talk about how if you can teach it, then you really know it. If you successfully are able to teach others, and you obviously know what's going on in the classroom. And something as simple as videotaping, it's really neat. I know that there's tools like Flipgrid and iMovie that allow you to record, but that's the demonstration to see how close or how deep the kids really understand the concepts, as well as allowing them to watch it back and having that feedback of how they would make adjustments. And they can get caught up in the glitz and glamour, or they can focus on the content. That's really where the structure and the teaching comes in, to make sure that it's content rich. But I love the idea of them being able to see their process or see their efforts, because that allows them to make the assessment and recognize in future opportunities what did they do in that situation and how can they do better or replicate it for future opportunities.
So
Yeah, exactly.
you teach elementary. Or what's the youngest grade that you teach? Is it
Kindergarten, so 5-year-olds,
Okay.
yeah.
So just for some fun, what does a kindergarten gym class look like? Because I have subbed kindergarten gym class before, and that was quite the experience. But just for some fun, and then we'll kind of dig into some of the things you share about. But just what does that look like?
Yeah, It's a lot more structured than maybe some of the ones you saw. However, at the same time, like I have to constantly be telling myself they've only been alive for like 60 months, right? So I used to be like pretty like really strict, it's not in a mean way, but like a routine way. But now I'm like, if they're doing a dance move that's a little different, whatever. I mean, who am I to jump on their happiness and correct into my dance move, right? So they'll go their we'll elbow bump and sanitize right now and greet them by name, and they'll come in and they'll go directly to their spot. And usually there's like some fun warm up on the board, like today we did when they came in. They heard a noise, animal noise, and then if they thought it was a whale, they did jumping jacks, and if they thought it was a dolphin, they did shoulder taps. So it's just a fun way to not only it's fun, but they also are active. That's how like, a good way to get warmed up. But they're also learning at the same time, whether it's science or math. We'll do odds and evens. So if they think 3 + 2 is odd, the answer is odd. So we'll do jumping jacks. Even the other exercise. So getting them to learn while they're doing it and being active, and then we'll go into usually some station work for K and 1 that allows them to not get bored. Right, they have to switch quite often. But for all the stations, if we have 4 stations, we'll have 4 GIFs on the board. So they know exactly how to do the skills. So they don't need to ask me anything. It's very self-directed. If they ever need help, they'll look at the screen. And if they're really good, a way to motivate them is to make GIFs of the students to put on the board. So Ken, how would you feel if you were a kindergartner and you had a really good last class in PE? Right when you came in, there was a GIF of you doing a jumping jack or something, and that just allows them to. And remember, you were good because you're good at listening, and that's what everyone can do. So it's not Ken was hitting the ball the furthest, but Ken was being a great listener, and then all of a sudden everyone wants to be a great listener, not just because of the GIF, but because that's what's highlighted. So a lot of changes as far as stations changing often, and just making sure they don't stay in one place too long, and just getting them active and as much fun as possible. But also a lot of partner stuff too, being practicing, taking turns, sharing, praising the fact that so and so gave up their equipment to share with their partner. So starts early as far as teaching those skills, and the earlier you start it, and the more often you praise those things, the easier it'll become once they get to 5th grade.
So Kyle, in that experience with kindergarten or really any of the grade levels, can you speak to things that you've had to put into place for, like I said, kindergarten specifically, or maybe 4th grade specifically, because of a need that you saw that then translated into you understanding, wow, this is just good practice and I need to do this with all my grade levels and every class that I'm working with? Does that make sense?
So is there something I saw a need for and I made a routine for it? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and then it ended up translating really across all your grade levels and classes.
I mean, one easy thing is the restroom box. So they just walk to the restroom box, and then I either give them a thumbs up or thumbs down based on if I'm teaching, they give me a thumbs down, which means not yet, and then thumbs up. And then that way they're not raising their hand and interrupting, but quick little way to, so usually it's kindergarten first that need to go a lot, but then we talk about like, if you can hold it, like you're going to miss a lot of fun stuff if you can't. But I understand if it's an emergency, go ahead. I would say just constantly having visuals for whatever we're doing, whether it's a GIF or a picture. That way, they feel like they're almost teaching themselves versus me always having to show them or tell them cues. They're kind of watching and doing. So today we're bowling, and I didn't say much at all. So we maximized time there because it was on the board. I gave them a couple things to think about, but then I said, if you ever need help, look at the board, and then versus having to raise their hand, ask me, what do I do? Can you show me? Well, I've already showed you, it's on the board. So things like that, just making it directions as obvious as possible. Color coordinate everything, routines consistent. Just practicing those things that are super important to you often. People ask me like, how do your kids do that? Well, it's because we practice that routine over and over. We started one of my favorite walk and talks. It's just called What's Your Favorite? So as we're walking from outside to inside, instead of wasting time walking, because sometimes we transition to the building, they're working with a partner and they'll say, what's your favorite? And they finish it by a pizza topping, ice cream, flavor, subject. and all of a sudden they're building these relationships that they wouldn't have otherwise had opportunity to do. At least, in kindergarten first, they're probably not thinking of that yet. So as I give them that STEM, they're learning about their classmates and then building those relationships. So we do a lot of random pairing. So I'll pair them randomly, and I use Class Dojo. So I put that on the board, and they see who their partner is, and therefore no one's left alone, right? So that awkward moment of no one having a partner, that's not happening. And then being open-minded and working with different types of people and practicing asking those questions. We talk about the easiest way to get to know somebody's by asking questions. So I think those things that people might come and see, they might be like, that would never work in my class. Well, it probably wouldn't work in my class either if we didn't practice it. So I think it's important to know that they just take time. They take time and practice, and then praise that practice that they're doing, whether it's a physical skill or teamwork skill or asking questions. And I think role modeling, visuals, practicing those routines all help the maximizing time.
That's so important. You've mentioned a couple times about using GIFs and even creating GIFs of your students. Can you just offer real quick, how are you doing that from a technology standpoint, just for our listeners and viewers to understand?
Yes, I just use my phone to record. So I record it as a video, and I use Image Play. It's a free app. I think it's called Image Play. It's yellow, but there's a lot of free GIF makers out there. So you just input into the app. You just input your video, and then pick the time that you want. Usually I do like a 4 or 5 second thing. And so today, for example, when we're bowling, that video of either me or a student is on the projector. So it constantly repeats. So they're constantly able to, there's never, I missed that, right? It's still in the video, which really helps kindergarten and first, but everybody, right? It even helps adults too. Like I was talking to this second grade teacher. She said she had a tough time with kids logging on to do their tests. And so I wanted her to make a GIF of somebody logging on, pressing the buttons, and posting that, so she's not always having to constantly help out. And some people still might need help, but I guarantee you there's several people that'd be like, oh, okay, so all you have to do is press Control Alt Delete, put your name in, So I think it could help actually beyond physical education and in the classroom as well. Or maybe we do this. We made a GIF of someone sitting crisscross and then walking to their line order to line up. So visuals there, right? So instead of it's just so much easier to see it and then do it, right, with a role model. So yeah, those are a big part of our program. Yeah, for sure.
I think modeling. And if you've listened to our podcast, one of the things that Ken is really great at, and one thing I'm working at, is really putting it in the hands of the kids. Like I love how when you were saying if the kids could learn the rules of the game or the activity of the game without you having to be the sole focus of we're going to waste instructional time for me to explain everything. If we can kind of work through and let the kids really experience and then insert adjustments, obviously you have safety procedures that you have to say, hey, we're not going to do this when we're playing hockey or whatever the case may be. We need to kind of have that foundation. But again, one of those things where if you can demonstrate on repeat, the whole concept, the benefit of flipped learning, which we've talked about in previous episodes, really comes down to the kids being able to view it at their pace and the potential to repeat if they, A, don't understand it, or B, need to revisit it because they clearly didn't understand it to begin with. So having a looping activity that, again, is not crazy long. I'll say that I don't put on my school computer because the icon's not great, but it's called GIF Brewery 3. A friend of the podcast, Dylan Peters, told me about it. I wouldn't have it. It's a mug with some foaming items, but
apple juice.
Apple juice, sure. But with that being said, there are tons of them on there. And it literally, as you were saying, Kyle, is about dragging a video in, identifying how long you want it to be, kind of chopping the segments up, and then publishing and throwing it into Google Slide or into your LMS. And then you have that step-by-step process that if they have to watch it 15 times, so be it. No big deal. And also to be that character, modeling it too, has got to be a huge benefit as well.
Absolutely. We Oh, real quick, we use a lot of self-guided progressions. So just like video games, so we'll start level 1, 2, 3, but all levels have GIFs. So if we're doing basketball, we might have that one favorite hand, and they're just constantly dribbling with their favorite hand. And level 2, other hand. So they have to get to a certain, 10 or 15, depending on the class. But all the GIFs are right there, and then usually the GIFs are students, right? So I'll have them do it at recess or at lunch, and then so when they come in, they know exactly what level. But then we talk about how everyone's working at their own pace, and that is more autonomy as far as like, they don't have to ask me what's next because they already see what level they're on. And then also that's a good self-assessment for them. They know what level they're on. They know what their goal is, and I can also see that too by just seeing what level they're working on. So it gives me feedback as far as how they're doing. It gives them a goal, but everything is right there with the GIF, and it's very easy to track progress for both the student and the teacher with visuals.
Absolutely. And I'll also throw up on the Powered Up forums just some different ways to create GIFs. I am going to go on record. I'm pretty sure it's GIF, not GIF.
I've heard both.
We'll leave
Interchangeable.
we'll leave the debate for another show. But there's a lot of options. Some of the screencasting tools that you may be using have that built-in feature. So I'll throw up some tutorials and some options for how you can create those if you wanna explore that more, because Kyle is painting a picture for how well and how effective they can be in your classroom. I think they're a little bit less pressure than a screencast. Sometimes teachers are hesitant with screencasts because they always say they don't like the sound of their voice. I always like to remind them that literally their students hear their voice all day, every day, and what you hear on the screencast is what everybody else is hearing. But regardless, I think it's a simpler way to kind of jump into that type of instruction. And Matt, to your point where you referenced about how in my classroom I was constantly pushing students to do as much as possible, but something that I haven't made very clear that I think Kyle is really bringing to light is, like you said, the modeling. I don't know that I've ever focused my conversation on how much time, effort, and consistency I put into modeling that behavior. And thinking back on it, I probably was using praise and those proximity praising and some of those specific skills that Kyle has talked about. It's so important when you have a desired outcome, when you have a vision for what your classroom is going to look like, you have to model it yourself. You have to be a role model. And you really have to have the patience to work with the students to get them to that point, and then be very specific and point it out and say, like, yep, that's it right now. Everybody stop and look. This is what we want our classroom to look like. This is what we're trying to reach. So to kind of transition a little bit, I'm sure everybody is aware of this. Physical education, especially at elementary, but I'd even argue secondary, is usually the favorite special for most of the students. So when I taught STEM for a year, I went on the record, I joked with the PE teacher, I said, I'm going to take that title from you this year. I want STEM to be the favorite special of all the students. So obviously every kid does not love sports. So why is it that, in your opinion, why is it that so many students love physical education class, even when they're not the sports athletic fanatic?
Yeah, I think that goes a little bit back to what we talked about as far as including their interests and doing some non-traditional things that that levels the playing field, that you don't have to be super fast or super strong. Like right now, we're doing bowling. You don't have to be fast or strong. Cup stacking we did previously. That's a non-traditional thing that they're crossing the midline. They're helping their brain. They're working on things, hand-eye coordination that can be transferred to other settings. So instead of the 4 week, 1 month, we're playing basketball, it's like, well, we might do some dribbling, but we might come back to dribbling at the end of the year, right? So it's not all in one short or one long month process. We'll revisit it and spiral it. So I think separating it, but also getting their interest and figure out what they're interested in. But also, like we talked about, the praise, right? So if we're praising things like honesty, right, you don't have to be an athlete to show honesty. So I think even though we're doing a lot of physical skills, everyone is so bought into what we're doing as far as feeling comfortable and safe in physical education, not just physically, but emotionally. I think they obviously trust me, and I've had them for 5 years now, so they know exactly what I'm about. So I think that culture that you establish, and just being there for the kids, that you can talk to them outside of class too. I think that's a huge part to why they want to come to PE, why they try so hard for me. I hear often that the same kids are amazing in physical education, sometimes act out, whether it's in art or music. Um, just because I think I've had them for so long, and there's consistent routines, and there's, we're establishing those relationships outside class. So I think you know, I think we minimize the importance of physical skills, even though they are important, but all to allow everyone to feel comfortable in PE. So I think that's why they love coming.
To kind of extend on it, one of the things that it's very evident is, again, you're not, we in our classroom, in my fourth grade classroom, if I was pumping up my highest student and ignoring the rest, or just saying, hey, look at the level you could get to, that is obviously not the method that is going to make an impact in my class. And by not prioritizing, acknowledging great athletic feats and athletic members of your class is probably still something that you do every once in a while. There's praise, whether it's the positive modeling of what is the right thing to do. But kind of talking about the general interaction of kids, because pairing a very talented, or honestly a kid that plays soccer in multiple leagues outside of school, and when we play soccer, it's a really serious opportunity to show your skill, with someone who's never played that sport before. How do you kind of work with those differences in abilities? I know you mentioned using Class Dojo to have diversified groupings, but there's got to be some in that modeling, or just kind of how you build, whether it's kind of empathy or consideration, or honestly appropriate levels of competition. Can you speak to how you have those interactions structured to really support your kids and making it as successful as possible, that both sides really enjoy it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think we talk about how everyone has different experience levels for each activity. So if we're doing foot skills, soccer, I know who plays outside of class. I know the experienced ones. I'll talk to them ahead of time and say, hey, I really need your help today. Like, we have 25 kids, and I know with one teacher they can be okay, but with two or three, with your help, they can be really good. And so putting them that leadership role, but privately, right? So, because they might not feel comfortable with it, right? But if they can help me, they get such a good feeling to help others. And also, I motivate them by, hey, if we get them up to do X, Y, and Z, then we can get into maybe more of a small sided game, because we need to have these skills in place for the game to run smoothly, or at least to a certain extent. And they want to play, but they also want to help, because they see me praising other people that are helping in previous units. They know that's really important to me. I even had a sign on my wall that says, "You will be teaching and learning." So, and then we'll get to dance, right? So, Matt, if you're really experienced in dance, I expect you to be able to help me out. And so they love it, though. They want to be in charge on the ones that they feel confident with. I tell them all the time too, like, my best students in PE, I have no idea. I have no idea if they love the activity or not, because they have a positive attitude, where they have a ton of experience or not. And then that gets them to think about their body language, whether they're new to something, being open-minded and try it, and listen to the helpers that I have established early from the beginning of class, and then you'll get your opportunity later. But that's what's so good about the self-guided progressions, because everyone can work at we call it the Goldilocks zone, that just right challenge. But understanding that you're not going to always be as good as so and so, but that's why everyone's so different. We're all experienced at different things, but we're all willing to help at the thing that we're experienced at. And that feeling that you get when you help somebody, we talk about, is pretty special.
I really like that Goldilocks zone.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great soundbite and a great way to put it for the students. You've talked a lot about the skills that they're learning, and it's commonly called soft skills, empathy, teamwork. I really don't like the term soft skills, because they're the most important skills, but Anyway, so what are ways that you find that you are modeling those skills, and then you've already talked about the modeling, but when do you see them come out when you're not intending for them to, and what are things that you do to emphasize that, highlight that? I would assume praise is part of that, but maybe even just speak to some examples of where you see your hard work pay off, where those soft skills really come out in a situation where you weren't trying to emphasize that specific skill.
Yeah, I think it does happen in class, but I think a special part is when parents email me saying my kid came home and said they wanted to donate food to the food drive, because we had a food drive, but then in our school, but then we went a step further in PE. So we played a game called special delivery tag. So if Ken, you were able to tag 5 people at the end of the round, you were able to deliver 5 food items. They're like bean bags that look like food to our jar, and then we talk about how good that makes you feel. So they worked so hard to get tags, not because they wanted to win a game, because they wanted to deliver food. And then we'll watch videos. They're really good videos. CBS On the Road. They're really feel good videos, and they're so good. So we watch those often. And then we talk about, this kid was a 4-year-old, and he was giving food out with his allowance to the people that didn't have any food. And then how good he felt, but then how we can do stuff like that to make a big difference. And once they understand like the big picture beyond like just our class, because we're very we're very blessed. We have a lot of equipment, we have space. Sometimes I show a picture of people with no equipment. They're playing soccer with no shoes on, they don't have any shoes, and so all of a sudden now they're less worried about what brand of shoes they have. Oh, I don't have the newest Nikes. I don't get to play with my favorite color ball, green. They're just happy to have any ball, and it doesn't even have to be a soccer ball. They can use a kickball, basketball. You can play soccer with a basketball. You can play basketball with a soccer ball, right? So you need to understand that like it's not about the materialistic things. It's about doing the right thing, helping people. But then the feeling that they get will continue for the rest of the class and even beyond. And there's no issue. There's like hardly any problems with behavior, because they're like always. They're just so they understand how grateful for we are, but they wouldn't if we didn't talk about it, if we didn't watch videos, if we didn't show pictures comparing us and them. So I think that's the stuff that comes out later in the year, whether it's from a parent or later in the year. I didn't necessarily plan on it having it a month from now, but because we talked about it today, something special might happen a month from now. So and so might do something for a classmate that we didn't talk about recently, and that'll man, I'm getting teary eyed here and just thinking about this stuff, because it does make me feel good, but it makes them feel good, and to hear the parents talk about the things that they're learning that they can use to help other people beyond physical education is very rewarding to me. And that's one of the things I love about PE, because I can teach the whole school, so I can impact the entire student body and be that role model that not everyone has, but everyone deserves, right? So if they don't have a dad or mom at home, if they're not around, they can always count on me to come to me and talk to them, and that's going back to why they love coming to PE, because they know they can count on me.
Can we just like pause and just say like that feeling is why we're in it, right? Like we've all felt it, right? Like we've all felt it, and that's what I mean. If you are listening to this podcast, it's because you care so much more about this position, because it's focused about the purpose, which is the kids, and I think that at the end of the day, when we can bring other purposes into kids have so much time, and Ken and I have talked about it before on the podcast and off, like when we can have kids still excited about something we're doing in class outside of even that time window that normally would be science class or normally PE class or normally reading class, if they are still buzzing off of that, that's when we know that we did our job right. And so when you set a purpose, when you can, I know, Ken, you said it perfectly, soft skills are the skills that we keep on learning, are the skills that are determine success, right? Like they can get caught up in reading, they can get caught up in math skills and their history, but if they don't have study skills and if they don't have the intrinsic motivation, that is the hardest thing to teach. And by modeling and cultivating that and being a trusting individual and kind of focusing on the key parts, that's what makes us come back. I mean, this year has been crazy. It has been absolutely crazy. But I can still tell you how I feel the first day that my kids came into my classroom, so excited to just be around me. And kids coming back into classrooms to just walk by and just be so grateful, and the amount of gratuity because we're there. And I think it's the end of the school year. Like we're nearing when this comes out, it's going to be summer, and I'm going to listen to this and wish we're back in the classroom, because that is what it's all about, right? Like this is why, and we're going to jump into our lesson lens, but I honestly, using that lens, like we need to continue to remind ourselves, and that's where our own, we were talking with a previous guest about kind of sharpening the sword, right? Like making sure we're putting ourselves in a position to give our all. And part of that is taking care of ourselves. And part of that taking care of ourselves is reminding ourselves exactly what you're doing. So I just, kudos to the idea of practical use. And honestly, the demonstration, I've got to imagine, sometimes you probably make it crazy for your staff members. Here's this crazy idea Mr. Bragg came up with that we're going to do. We all do those things, but a huge gift to your staff to just say, hey, this is so much more than just they took the top off of their energy. It's we kind of focused on how do we interact, and we've heard over and over and over again about how relationships important. Well, you have spent a ton of time demonstrating the foundations to establish culture, establish models, to say, hey, we've already talked about that. You can go check. We have the visual representation of how we deal with it, so that you don't have to take away from the opportunity. So awesome stuff. I think that if anything, I'm excited to go to school tomorrow, and just be like, hey, this is what it's all about. This is the opportunity. And kids have the time. When talking about this CBS on the road, like setting purposes and goals, they have the time. They have the ability, and it may not look perfect, but when they grow up and turn into adults, it's going to stick with them. Cool stuff. I love it.
I love what you said about the gratitude, though, too. Like I have a lot of friends across country that are still online teaching, and I tell my kids, we're about to play a great game. We say, you know how many kids around the country would love to be here right now playing this game with you, but they're not. They're on Zoom. So let's appreciate what we have, keep our mask on, and now there's no problems with masks because everyone wants to be in person safe, because if we pull them down and somebody gets, we'll have to go back to virtual. So I think that's highlighting that gratitude and explaining the why we're doing what we're doing, why we have our masks on, not because I said so, because I want everyone to be safe. And from a caring lens and getting to understand that makes a big difference with, following through with the masks and having gratitude towards that game.
Yeah, I just want to echo what you both are saying about, why we're in this, why we do this podcast, Matt, because we want the teachers, the educators, the administrators listening to this to reinforce to themselves that the things that you do outside of your curriculum really do matter, and the impact that you have on students can be so profound. And it's one of the most valuable parts of the job. I actually just today ran into two former students who are freshmen in high school now, and we were chatting. They were talking about what school's like, and they asked me, so that they're like, do you like your new job as an instructional coach better than being a teacher? And I right away I responded, no. I love my job, and I think it's a great fit for me right now, and I think I'm in a position I should be in. But it's not better than teaching. There's nothing better than having a classroom full of kids. And nothing will ever change my mind about that. So let's transition into the lesson lens. And with that transition, I just want to say that example of the beanbag game, with relating it to the food drive. You may not play tag in your classroom, especially if you're not a physical ed teacher. But Kyle painted the picture of real world instructional strategies. How do we relate real world things happening to our classroom instruction. So he could just play tag. Like you could just teach, adding fractions, the Revolutionary War, whatever it is. But he found a way to be creative and related to something current and related to something happening in their world. And we all can make those efforts to try to do that same creative instructional approach. So we're going to dive into our lesson lens, Kyle, and Matt and I are just going to ask you some questions to allow you to paint the picture of something specific in your classroom. You've talked about a lot, so you got to come up with something new. So hopefully you didn't use up what you were already going to talk about. So question number one is, are we looking at a unit overview, a long-term project, or a single lesson?
Let's do a single lesson for second grade.
All right, so for second grade, normally we do subject area and time of the year, but maybe is there a characteristic or a specific focus for the subject?
Yeah, so after our locomotors, hopping, skipping, jumping, we'll eventually get to jump rope about end of November, December. So we'll do a second grade jump rope unit, and we'll call this the first day of the unit.
Awesome. Is there a specific objective for what you want to accomplish with this lesson?
First, I want them to get excited about it, so I'll show them a hook video to get them to see the tricks and all the cool stuff about jump rope, and then we'll talk about like the what, why, how. We always do a what, why, how. That's really important for our program. To what are we learning? So second grade's learning their end of the unit objective is to be able to jump 5 times in a row, either forwards or backwards consecutively. But we talk about how that's not necessarily the lesson objective, because we're gonna get there eventually. But I want them to know the long-term goal, and the short-term goal would be all these things that lead up to that, whether it's understanding the cues, making sure you do it in the right speed, having your body in the position to be successful. So that's the long-term goal. Short-term goal is just to learn how to jump effectively with the right cues and things. So get them excited, get them to understand why we're doing it. So even if they don't love to jump rope, we talk about how it helps their heart, which if you like to play basketball or soccer, you're going to need a healthy heart to play. So that makes it relevant for them and applicable to them. Now they're more motivated than they would have been previously. And then we start, I guess I didn't want to take all your questions, but yeah. So that's the what, why, how, and then the objective would be long-term and short-term. There's a little difference there.
So if I am a student in your classroom, what would I expect to be doing during that class period?
Yeah, so one of my favorite warm-ups before we do the jump rope is they come in and we play a game called Line Your Mainers. Line Your Mainers is when they're on the basketball lines, on the basketball court, and they're doing various locomotors, which are going to help us with jump rope, right? Hopping, jumping, leaping. So once they interact with somebody or come across somebody, pre-COVID, we would normally introduce ourselves. So they're practicing saying their names, shaking hands, making eye contact. Then they play rock, paper, scissors, which is a good way to solve problems, small problems in our class, rather than wasting time and arguing. So they'll solve a problem. The problem is they can't get around each other, right? And then the winner takes, says good game, GG, we call it GG. And then we take our arm and get out of the way and say go ahead with the little arm signal that the winner lets the non-winner pass. So right there, we're teaching empathy, we're teaching eye contact, we're teaching how they can use that in interviews. They could use it right now if they're talking to you guys. So making that eye contact. So teaching real world things that we talk about, just like the food drive. And then we'll transition to jump ropes. So they'll first see the whole thing, what we're working towards, and we'll break it down into parts. And the first one will be direct instruction without the rope. So the rope's on the ground, so we'll practice jumping over the rope, making sure they feel comfortable having the correct jump without having to manipulate the rope. We'll do like zigzags and backwards and eyes closed and things like that. So we'll work on soft jumps, soft landings, jump like a bunny. So that relates them to what they know. Bunnies are landing softly. So just a bunch of cues we'll go over, but we'll have the video on the board or the GIF on the board, and then we'll slow it down, and then they'll do it with me, and then we'll teach them the ready position. We'll teach them how to measure the jump rope so they can do it on their own without me. So it goes up to your armpits when you step on the middle, so both sides come up to your armpits. So all these things we're teaching them that are eventually going to get to our long-term objective, which is 5 jump ropes. So we'll start with direct instruction. Then I'll have them practice. I'll go around. I'll have a helper, just like that I know that's experienced and I can do 5 already. they'll go around and help people and give some good tips and feedback. So I'm constantly having students kind of help me teach and help meet those objectives as well.
That's awesome. You really painted that well. You kind of just touched on it, but anything you want to add in terms of your role in ensuring the success of students?
Yeah, I think making sure that they know what they're working on, right? So we're giving them autonomy, but if someone asks, hey, what are you working on? What are the goals of this lesson? I think it's important for the students to know. So that's why we talk about the what, why, how, and that'll help them track their success. So when we have plickers, I don't know if you guys use plickers, but plicker magnets. So at the end, they're either not yet, getting there, got it, or wow, and that's the criteria that's on the board. Okay, so a wow would be on the first day you already have the 5 jumps or more, right? Do I expect that? No, but I expect them to be honest. And since their plickers are private, they're more willing to be honest because they're not going to be embarrassed because no one can see their answer. So they're constantly tracking their progress, and I'll have that listed on the board so they know what they're working towards. Um, so maybe the not yet is I can jump, but I can't turn it and jump it, right? And then maybe the getting there would be I can do 2, and then God would be 3 or 4, and then wow would be 5. So they know exactly what they're working on. But understanding that the wow, right, that takes some more responsibility because now I expect you to kind of help me out and give some other people some help. So I think it's just making the objectives very clear and being consistent with that and making sure they understand where they're going is really helpful.
And I'd be interested to hear your question or your answer to this. Kind of teaching, you talk about setting goals, and the long term lesson goal is to jump 5 times. But is there an extension that you would add in your dream world of, hey, this is where I would like to? We're setting it as 5 now, but is there a deeper purpose or a deeper goal that you would like them to work towards if you had your way?
Well, so at the end of the unit, we usually have a pyramid. So it's kind of like a self-guided progression where let's say the pyramid's 4 at the bottom, so 4 GIFs playing, and you can do this 3 times. So it could be backwards 3 times. It could be 1 foot, right? But it's not something so drastically different to where it's like, a 5th grade trick. It's still appropriate, but they're challenged. So once they pick which one they want to do, so they give them that choice, then they move up the pyramid if they got X number of jumps. But then they're constantly getting choice, but they're constantly getting more challenged, which is good because it gives them that Goldilocks zone, right? And then if they can get all the way up, obviously that would be another wow, right? But the cool thing is the choices, and they always challenge well. But then we'll get into some partner tricks, so we can use those problem solving teamwork strategies, that collaboration within our jump rope lesson. That could be an extension to show kind of more bang for your buck there, I would say.
That's awesome. That was really cool. I like how you showcased a lot in there and was obviously about jumping rope, but you hit on so many key instructional strategies in that one lesson and things that teachers can apply regardless of their content area. So the last section of our show is the exit ticket. Same 4 questions Matt and I ask every guest every week. Question number 1, what is the best thing a teacher can do to make a student's school experience better?
I would say notice them, notice the details about them, talk to them about things beyond your class. In PE, I have all the kids, right? So the kindergartners, the first day, I don't know them. We go over a couple of routines, but then we play name tag. And then the first round, they come over and say their name. Every time they get tagged, they say their name. So eventually I learn their name. But then the second round, they tell me an interesting fact. So now I have to memorize their name and interesting fact about them or something they love to do, favorite sport, whatever. So now I'm connecting their interests and their names. So I'm making them feel important by learning about them. I would say going to recess and hanging out with them for a little bit, things that you do that you could do just for a minute or two that goes beyond what you're expected to do. Maybe saying hi at lunch, like it makes a huge difference, and just kind of noticing them and making them feel important. And that'll translate to more learning in your classroom because they see that you care so much. And we all know that, the more you care, the more time you put in, the more they're going to work for you, right?
Absolutely. What's the best advice that you got, or maybe that comes up frequently for you, whether it was a colleague, it might have been a supervisor, or even a student, that you think of through the tough times or to really get focused for a day?
I would say somebody told me to understand that all these kids, they have a parent. They have a parent. So I need to almost treat them as if they're not just some human being. Like all of them have parents. Like all of them have people that really love them. Not all of them, I guess, but my point is treat them the way that I would want my child to be treated, right? So instead of seeing them as they are a student, but I want to make sure that I treat, if I was a parent, I would want to see a teacher treating them like they would teach their own child. So sometimes I have to remind myself that, right? They're not just this random kid. They're a kid that they probably have a parent that loves them and cares about them and wants them to succeed. And so I don't want to yell at them, right? I want to make sure I support them. So just treat people, treat the students the way you would do if their parent was watching. I guess that would be a better way of saying it.
That's huge. My superintendent, his first year in the district, made a point in his first delivery with the entire staff. We had to identify a who in our life. Who is most important to us? Who did we really do everything for? Typically, your kids, your spouse, maybe your parents, depending on where you're at in your life. And he wanted us to remember that every child sitting in our classroom, every child that we interacted with a day, is somebody's who. And it's exactly what you're saying. It's somebody's who. It's their world. That child is somebody's world, and you have to understand that home lives are home lives, and they come from different situations, and it's really important to empathize with them. We had a guest, Liz Bostwick. She was show 20. She talked about always assume positive intentions. It was something along those lines, like always assume the positive with the student before you jump to conclusions about why didn't you do your homework, or why did you misbehave. Always have those positive assumptions about that child. So the school year goes in waves. We have incredibly stressful times, typically around report cards, conferences, state testing, just different times of the year. What is something that you want to say to teachers that they could hear in that moment to really power up and rise above?
I think it kind of goes back to our why we're in this in the first place. As teachers, I have 7 days left of kids, but I understand that this is a time that they need us the most. And instead of, I'll be honest, I am counting down the days, but at the same time, I'm working as hard as I ever have on these last 7 days, because I know that guilt I'll feel if I don't, and how the kids deserve my best. In National Board Certification, we always talk about how kids deserve an accomplished teacher. They deserve a teacher that does their very, very best. And I take pride in doing that for the rest of the year. And I think you will feel so proud of yourself, and it'll lead into the great summer if you give everything you have. It doesn't mean that you'll get everything done that you set out to, but at least you had it planned out as far as challenging them and making it meaningful and relevant. So do whatever you can to make sure you finish strong, and you'll feel so much prouder when you go into the summer, and then probably you'll be more excited to start the school year again. So finish strong. The kids deserve it.
That is huge. They do deserve it. They always do. Man. You have shared so many awesome things. I guess if people wanted to continue the conversation with you, what would be the best way that they can connect or follow along with your adventures, whether it's kind of passively or directly?
Yeah, Twitter is definitely the best way. I'm at ELEMPE1, at ELEMPE1. So just shoot me a message, and I love connecting with new people on Twitter, and regardless of content area, and share and bounce ideas off each other. So I would love to continue learning and growing from all you guys, and I appreciate you guys having me on, and I'm looking forward to continue learning from you guys.
Thank you so much, Kyle. We'll link to his Twitter handle on our show notes page, which can be found at powereduup.com/show22. Kyle, this was fantastic. I had a blast. You shared so much great insight. I am fired up to go in tomorrow. Sometimes, especially after tonight, I miss the classroom, and I am missing the classroom right now. I love my job as an instructional coach, but I am missing that. So many things that you talked about. And like you said, regardless of content area, you shared great instructional strategies tonight that we can implement into our classrooms, and just a great reminder of why we're in this business, why the students matter, and how we show them that they matter and that we care. So thank you everyone for listening. If you haven't already, please subscribe, whether it be on YouTube or your favorite podcast app that you listen on. And please share this with another teacher. Not for Matt, not for me, but for Kyle. For that teacher to hear Kyle's message and hopefully share it with another teacher. We want great teachers to find this, to feel empowered about what they do, and that a reminder that it is special, and other teachers that can hopefully pick up a tip or two and impact their classroom in a positive way, and ultimately impact the students in that room. So Kyle, thanks again. Your school is clearly very, very lucky to have you. Your kids are blessed to have you as their teacher. And I will also say that the ones that cut you, bad choice. Clearly a bad choice. You got the Tom Brady chip on your shoulder. I can tell it's helped you lead to, like you said, all that success and the accolades that you've received over the years. So keep it up, don't quit, and they're super lucky to have you. Matt,
I appreciate that.
Why don't you close down shop for us?
All right, so as we power down this episode, Kyle, you've left us feeling powered up. Really appreciate your time, everyone. Make every day count. As Kyle was saying, every moment is a great way to power into the summer. You'll feel great about it, and your kids will remember these days as the highlight of the grade level in the year that they had with you. So do your best, stay happy, stay healthy, get through it, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, guys.